In the quiet heart of the Cotswolds, a single secret can stir up more trouble than a whole village of gossip. Tonight's mystery begins where certainty ends and danger begins. Where in the world are you listening from tonight? And subscribe so you never miss upcoming mysteries. Nero Wolfe and the woman who owned 6 Dobermanns. I've had all kinds of visitors turn up at the brownstone. Clients, grifters, reporters, lost delivery boys, and one memorably confused contortionist. But I'd never opened the door to 6 Dobermanns lined up like a firing squad waiting for my last words. Their handler, a wiry fellow in a dark green livery, was doing his best to look like he controlled them. The dogs, for their part, were doing their best to pretend he didn't exist. Between them stood the reason for the spectacle. She was tall, wrapped in a sable coat with the kind of posture that told you chairs bowed to her before she ever sat down. Her eyes were sharp, poised, and appraising in the way of someone long accustomed to evaluating breeding stock, human or canine. "Good morning," she said, voice cool as a marble countertop. "Are you Mr. Goodwin?" "I am," I replied. "And unless this is a parade permit inspection, I'm going to need a reason for the canine cavalry." A faint curl touched her mouth. "I am Verena Montague. I require an immediate consultation with Mr. Wolfe." "Mr. Wolfe," I said, "is presently in the plant rooms, communing with his orchids. That ritual runs until 11, and he has been known to threaten war if interrupted before the hour." "That will not do." Her eyes didn't blink. People who don't blink always raise my hackles. "It is a matter of danger." "To you," I said, "or to the dogs?" Her jaw twitched. "Both." I gave the formation of Dobermanns another look. They were still staring at me like I owed them rent. "Well," I said, "Mr. Wolfe does enjoy a novelty, but I should warn you, he doesn't accept clients during orchid hours even when dynamite's involved. You can wait in the office." She nodded, flicked her fingers at the handler, and the man led the entire regiment away down the stoop with quiet efficiency. If they'd wanted to, they could have taken the stoop with them. Inside, I guided her to Wolfe's office. She took the red leather chair opposite Wolfe's empty one, as if she'd rehearsed it. I gave her the once-over professionally. Everything about her was curated. Hair, makeup, posture. If dogs could be bred for elegance, she was living proof the process worked on humans too. "I must speak to Mr. Wolfe the moment he comes down," she said. "You and the rest of Manhattan. But tell me, in case he wants triage, are we dealing with blackmail, extortion, or the four-legged variety of trouble?" She reached into her handbag and produced a thick envelope. "This is his retainer." That was the precise moment I knew Wolfe would tolerate her, orchids or not. Even from the hallway you could smell money as concentrated as that envelope. At 11 sharp, Wolfe descended like a rumbling mountain, taking in Verena Montague with one raised brow and a soft grunt that meant interest overcoming annoyance. He lowered himself into his oversized chair, pressed the tips of his fingers together and said, "Madam, I am informed you insist." "I do." She handed him the envelope. Wolfe opened it, counted silently, and nodded. "You will state your business." She did. Her tone never cracked, but her breathing did. Someone had sent her an anonymous typed letter, no signature, informing her that a bloodline secret tied to her late husband's kennel dealings would soon surface, and that one of her 6 championship Dobermanns would be the first casualty. Wolfe's eyelids twitched the moment she said championship Dobermanns. He wasn't sentimental about animals, but he did have a collector's appreciation for price tags. "Archie Goodwin," I thought, "you are officially in the dog business." "You have enemies?" Wolfe asked. "Everyone with a kennel has enemies," she said with glacial calm. "But I have more than most. We compete for the same bloodlines, the same judges, the same prestige. A single poisoned dog can sink a reputation." "Pfui," Wolfe waved a hand. "Reputations are sturdier than that." "Not in my world," she said. "In my world, a champion Doberman is worth more than trust." I couldn't resist. "Do they come with warranties?" Wolfe shot me a look over steepled fingers, half warning, half affection. He only bothers to glare when he doesn't want the client to know he enjoys me. Verena continued. "Someone has already tried. One of my dogs, Claudia, was poisoned 3 nights ago. She survived, barely. My veterinarian identified digitalis." Wolfe inhaled sharply. Not dramatic, but enough to count as shock in wolf speak. "Why," he said slowly, "did you not lead with that?" Her eyes hardened. Because I was deciding how much to trust you. Wolfe's voice dropped several degrees. Madam, I do not indulge half-truths. If you withhold one more pertinent detail, I shall terminate this engagement immediately. I mentally counted 3 seconds before she flinched. She managed it in 2. My husband, she said, left behind complexities, rivalries, debts, and enemies. Some of his decisions still echo. You will specify those echoes, Wolfe demanded. She hesitated. Wolfe reached for the bell cord. Madam, I will tell you, she said quickly. She swallowed once, the first real sign she wasn't carved from imported ice. My husband forged a number of breeding certificates. He passed off a young, untested Doberman as the progeny of a famous sire. That falsification infected several elite bloodlines. If exposed, it would destroy multiple kennels, including mine. Wolfe's lips compressed until they nearly vanished. Forgery of pedigree documents, he said, is a profitable swindle, and a perilous one. Verena nodded. Several breeders suspect past irregularities but have never proved anything. If someone now has evidence, they could ruin us all. Then someone is leveraging that evidence, I said, by threatening doggy homicide. Creative, I'll give them that. Her head snapped toward me. This is not a joke, Mr. Goodwin. I agree, Wolfe said sharply, defending me by redirecting her glare. Archie, though inclined to levity, is competent. You will not rebuke him for performing his function. That landed her back against the chair. Wolfe seldom defends me in public. When he does, it's a velvet-wrapped gavel. Wolfe continued. You received 1 anonymous letter? 3, she admitted. They were typed, unsigned, and each more explicit than the last. She withdrew them from her bag. 3 crisp sheets folded with military geometry. Wolfe inspected them without touching the edges. His eyes tracked the lines, searching for spacing irregularities or typist habits. Archie, Wolfe said. Note the pattern. The typist depresses the T more forcefully. Observe the faint overprint. I did, though I knew he already had the whole thing diagrammed in his mind like a chessboard. I made notes anyway. Wolfe likes his ducks aligned, preferably alphabetized. Who, Wolfe asked, knew the truth about your husband's fraud? Only one person, she said. Clyde Reams, my head handler. And is he discreet? She exhaled. He is loyal, but he is also ambitious. I filed that under suspicious but convenient. Clyde might be innocent, but people who know secrets often end up collecting motives. Wolfe tapped the desk. Your husband's estate, was it contested? Yes, bitterly. His brother believed he deserved half the kennel assets. They haven't spoken in years. Wolfe's eyebrows settled into their thinking posture. And who benefits most if your kennel collapses? Lydia Corbel, she said without hesitation. She runs the only kennel that consistently rivals mine. She's ruthless, strategic, and has a long memory. So, of course, I said cheerfully, you're certain she's innocent. Her eyes flickered with annoyance. Wolfe allowed himself the smallest of sighs, meaning Archie. Must you? But he didn't reprimand me, which was his way of saying the joke had value. Wolfe sat back. Show Mr. Goodwin the poisoning attempt. She produced a small glass vial with traces of white residue. The vet returned this to me. The poisoned treat was dipped in digitalis. I didn't touch it, not with Wolfe watching, but I leaned close enough to see the crystalline dusting. Somebody wasn't playing around. Wolfe said, Archie will verify the scene. You will provide addresses for all involved, including your late husband's brother, your kennel manager, handlers, and rivals. I will, she paused. Mr. Wolfe, I fear the next attack may be on me. Wolfe's tone turned sombre, almost gentle. Madam, if someone intended to harm you directly, they would not waste toxins on Dobermanns. You are safer than you imagine, I added, though I'd avoid dark alleys, untended staircases, and gentlemen offering free dog biscuits. Her stare could have made milk curdle. Fortunately, I stick to ginger ale. Wolfe straightened. Before I accept this case, you will answer a final question. Why now? Why, after all these years, has someone chosen this moment to expose the fraud? Her hands tightened on the armrest. Because the National Breeding Championship is in 2 weeks. Publicity, prestige, money. If someone reveals the truth at the height of the competition, the scandal will be catastrophic. Ah, Wolfe said softly, and thus the pressure. He closed his eyes briefly, arranging his thoughts like soldiers on parade. When he opened them, his voice had the resonance of a verdict. I will accept your case, with conditions. Anything, she said. You will tell Mr. Goodwin all relevant details promptly. You will not mislead him. You will not interfere with the police, and you will tolerate his manner. That last one, I said, is non-negotiable. Comes with the suit. Her lips compressed, but she nodded. Very well. Wolfe reached for the bell cord and tugged, summoning Fritz. That act meant the meeting was concluded and lunch was approaching, and nothing interferes with Wolfe's meals unless the universe intends war. Fritz appeared in the doorway as if conjured, tall, neat, and serene, like a Swiss saint of the kitchen. Yes, sir. Miss Montague will take lunch with us, Wolfe instructed, provided she has no objection. Verena blinked. I would be honoured. You need not be, Wolfe said. You need only comply with my schedule. I stood. I'll see our guest to the dining room. Then I'm off to examine poisoned pastries and talk to dog people. If you don't hear from me by dinner, assume I've been eaten. Wolfe grunted. Archie, respect yourself. Which, translated, meant be careful, as close to fatherly concern as Nero Wolfe permits in public. As I escorted Verena to the dining room, I caught one last look at the 3 anonymous letters spread across Wolfe's desk like playing cards dealt by a crooked gambler. Whoever had sent them wasn't bluffing, and the game had officially begun. I've walked into my share of unpleasant rooms, alcohol-perfumed speakeasies, cramped hotel parlours where the wallpaper fought the carpet for ugliness, and more than one alley where the rats stared like they were calculating rent. But nothing quite prepares a man for the smell of fear mixed with disinfectant. It hits you in the throat first, then settles behind the eyes. By the time I stepped through the brass-trimmed doors of Verena Montague's Midtown Kennel Club, the combination had formed a welcome committee. The club itself was a glossy Art Deco palace, the kind that tried to make you forget the tenants were all four-legged. Checkerboard tile floors stretched out beneath chrome railings, and the halls gleamed like someone polished them hourly with the tears of defeated dog show competitors. A receptionist with a jawline sharp enough to slice paper informed me without blinking, "They're in the exam suite, Mr. Goodwin." Even her voice sounded lacquered. "What's the mood?" I asked. "Afraid," she said, "and defensive." That defined the kennel world pretty well. I made my way down the hall, passing grooming stations full of brushes, oils, and the kind of products that cost more than my suits. Dog people always take themselves seriously. Their dogs take themselves even more so. The door to the clinic was open. Inside, Inspector Kramer stood over a stainless steel table, cigar stump clamped in his teeth but unlit. Proof he was taking things seriously. On the table lay a Dobermann, rigid and still, a creature that had probably been worth more than my annual salary when it could still breathe. Kramer didn't look up right away. He grunted. "I should have known you'd show up." "Pure coincidence," I said. "I was in the neighborhood visiting a florist." He gave me a sideways glance that translated to, "Don't push it." Professional irritation, not personal, which between us counts as warm affection. "This one of Wolfe's errands?" "One of life's errands," I said. "Does it matter?" "It will if he starts meddling." He took the cigar out of his mouth. Digitalis poisoning. Clean, concentrated, deliberate. I approached the table. The dog's coat was glossy, even in death. Whoever had groomed it cared, which made its fate all the uglier. "Where'd it happen?" "Training pen," Kramer said. "Collapsed after eating a treat." He jerked his thumb toward a tray. On it lay the remains of a gelatin capsule mashed into crumbs. "Vet says the poison was inside that." "Clever delivery," I said. "Whoever did it knew how to hide a surprise." "Or they wanted it found," Kramer muttered. That was the obvious red herring. A poisoner who wanted credit usually wasn't half this neat. I spotted 3 people clustered at the far end of the room. A woman in a navy skirt suit with clipped efficiency oozing from every pore, a broad-shouldered, hollow-cheeked man with a stable-hands gait, and a sharp-eyed woman in a white coat who radiated medical judgment like a beacon. I gave Kramer a nod and drifted toward them. "Morning," I said. "Archie Goodwin. I'm looking into this for Mrs. Montague." The woman in navy straightened like someone had tightened a string in her back. "Pauline Derringer, kennel manager." Her tone suggested she handled disasters before breakfast. The broad-shouldered man shoved his hands into his pockets. "Rufus Gale," he said. "Stable hand. I take care of training setups. Didn't see anything. Doesn't mean I didn't want to." His resentment crackled like static. "And you?" I asked the woman in the coat. "Dr. Elsie Worth," she replied crisply. "Veterinarian. And before you ask, yes, I examined the animal. Yes, it was digitalis. No, nothing about this aligns with any internal protocols." Her voice could have sterilized instruments. I looked at Pauline. "Any chance one of your employees is supplementing the dog's diet with murder?" Her nostrils flared. "Absolutely not. My staff is loyal." "Loyal people poison dogs all the time," Rufus said bitterly, "usually when someone pushes them too far." Pauline snapped. "No one here was pushed." "Depends who you ask," he shot back. A little kennel club friction, always useful for misdirection. I crouched near the trash bin beneath the counter. Amid gauze pads and rubber gloves, a torn scrap of a specialty treat wrapper peeked out, lavender-striped, imported, expensive. I didn't touch it. Instead, I pointed my pen at it. "That your usual brand?" Pauline frowned. "No, we never use those. Too rich for regular training." "Looks like someone did." I leaned closer without disturbing a thing. Hidden capsule, different treat brand. Someone planned this. Dr. Worth crossed her arms. And someone with access to storage, not a random intruder. "Which narrows the field," I said brightly, "like sorting suspects by weight class." Kramer joined us. "Goodwin, don't start." He pointed a thick finger. "And don't obstruct. This is the second poisoning attempt at this kennel in 6 months." "Second?" I lifted a brow. "Your report to Wolfe skipped that detail." "Because Wolfe didn't ask," Kramer snapped, "and I don't report to him." "Of course not," I said smoothly. "You just envy his success rate." Pauline blinked. Rufus smirked. Dr. Worth didn't move a muscle. Kramer's ears reddened, but he didn't bite. That was the best part about him. All bark, but the bite stays holstered unless you deserve it. "So where were each of you when this happened?" I asked. Pauline gave me times with military precision. Rufus mumbled something about fixing a gate hinge, but had no corroboration. Dr. Worth had been in surgery with a spaniel whose anxiety issues made me grateful humans rarely whined with that pitch. "Any rivalries?" I pressed. Pauline hesitated. "Mrs. Montague has many competitors. The dog show circuit can be political." "Political," Rufus echoed darkly, "meaning half the breeders in Manhattan would sell their grandmother for a blue ribbon." "That will be enough," Dr. Worth said sharply. "This is a tragedy, not gossip hour." Which, from a vet, was a pretty good red herring. Overcompensation always smells fishy. Kramer clapped his hands once. "Goodwin, you've seen what there is to see. Don't get underfoot." "I never do," I assured him. "I just walk in inconvenient places." He grunted. "Tell Wolfe I don't want any stunts, and if he's got theories, he can send them through me." "That's his preferred method," I lied cheerfully. Back outside, the city greeted me with a blast of cold midtown air, smelling of taxis and ambition. I called a cab and headed back to the brownstone. Wolfe doesn't like waiting for reports unless they're accompanied by lunch. When I stepped into the office, Wolfe was in his chair, book balanced like a crown on his stomach. He lifted his eyes, but not his head. "Report." I gave him the whole rundown, the poisoning, the capsule, the fancy treat wrapper, the nerves, the hostility, the politics. Wolfe listened with the patience of a man who harvests data like orchids, slowly, meticulously, and only under his conditions. "You did not memorize the dogs' names," he concluded sternly. "I left my canine Rosetta Stone in the car," I said. "Next time I'll tattoo them." "Pfui," he waved a hand. "And the wrapper?" "Different brand than usual." "That," Wolfe murmured, "is noteworthy." He steepled his fingers. "Saul must shadow Mrs. Montague, subtly. Tonight." I nodded. "On it." Fritz appeared in the doorway. "Lunch is ready, Mr. Wolfe." Wolfe rose. "Archie, attend." And just like that, the dead Doberman in Midtown became the first ripple in a very dark pond. I've never believed in omens, but seeing Verena Montague step out of a taxi without her battalion of Dobermans felt like one. It was the first time I'd seen her unaccompanied, and she looked 10 pounds lighter without the canine security detail, or maybe 10 pounds heavier with whatever was riding her nerves. When she swept into the office that morning, She carried tension the way other women carry perfume, deliberately and in high concentration. "Good morning, Miss Montague," I said, holding the door open with exaggerated grace. "We can provide water bowls upon request, though I assume your entourage is enjoying a day off." Her eyes flashed annoyance. "This is not a social visit, Mr. Goodwin." "Then you're in luck," I said. "We're fresh out of croissants." Wolfe was already in his chair, massive and motionless as a monument, fingers steepled, gaze fixed on her with the same expression he uses when contemplating a new orchid hybrid, respect tinged with suspicion. "Madam," he said, "your summons implied urgency." She sat. For the first time, her posture wasn't perfect. Her shoulders carried a tremor that belonged more to sleepless nights than cold weather. "You asked yesterday how far the bloodline secret really went," she began. "I told you part of it. I wasn't prepared to admit the rest." "And now?" Wolfe inquired. She hesitated. Wolfe tapped a single finger on the armrest. "Madam, I remind you that deception compounds like interest. You will speak plainly, or we shall part ways immediately." That snapped her last barrier. She exhaled like a diver resurfacing. 15 years ago. "It wasn't just a handful of forged certificates," she murmured. "My husband built an entire line on a Doberman we already knew carried hereditary defects. He didn't just pass off one untested dog as the offspring of a renowned stud. He let that tainted lineage spread through the top rings. It contaminated several elite bloodlines, mine included." The words hit the room with a physical weight. Even the morning light coming through the window seemed to dull at the edges. "Name the defects," Wolfe said. "Hip dysplasia," she murmured. "Aggressive tendencies. Renal instability. None of it surfaced for years, but when it did, judges began whispering. Breeders distanced themselves. We spent a decade repairing the damage." "Repairing?" Wolfe echoed sharply. "Do you mean concealing?" She stiffened. "Preserving the reputation of my kennel is not concealing." "Pfui," Wolfe's nostrils flared. "Let us not haggle over euphemisms. You have admitted to one fraud. Might there be others you conveniently forget?" "There aren't," she insisted. Her eyes flickered, barely, but they did, when Wolfe said the next name. "And Lydia Corbel?" A ripple passed through her composure. "My rival," she said flatly. "My enemy, if you want the truth. But she had nothing to do with the forgery. She benefited from the scandal, of course. When our lines faltered, hers rose." "And now?" Wolfe pressed. "She seeks to humiliate me at the upcoming championship. Her dogs have been outperforming mine for 2 years." A shadow crossed Verena's features. She'd love nothing more than to see my kennel collapse completely. I rose. "I'll go see her." Wolfe gave a curt nod. "Proceed. Exercise tact. Miss Corbel is formidable, and her temper is not to be trifled with. Tact may not be my strongest department, but charm covers a multitude of sins." I grabbed my hat and coat and headed uptown. Lydia Corbel's townhouse was a shrine to modern interior design and questionable warmth. Glass, steel, angles sharp enough to cut your personality to ribbons. When she let me in, the house felt like it had been oxygen-deprived deliberately, perhaps for aesthetic reasons. She was tall, lean, and carried herself like a general, straight-backed and lethal. Her eyes were the color of old ice, beautiful, but not recommended for swimming. "You're Verena Montague's pet detective?" she asked. "I prefer independent contractor," I said. "Sounds less like I fetch slippers." She didn't smile. "Why are you here?" "Trouble at the kennel," I said. "Digitalis poisoning, dead dog, anonymous threats, that sort of thing." Her jaw worked. "So, she's finally panicking." "You're not?" "Why should I be?" she said coolly. "Her empire was built on pretense. It's about time the debt came due." It wasn't exactly a confession, but it was enough animosity to power a small turbine. "Did you ever suspect her husband?" I asked. She snorted, a crisp, disdainful sound. "Everyone suspected him. He was ambitious, too ambitious. Verena just spent years polishing the fallout." "Did you receive a typed letter recently?" I asked. Her gaze sharpened. "Why?" "Sharing is caring," I said, "and it might save your dogs." She paused, then crossed to a small drawer and pulled out a folded sheet. "I received this last week." The letter was typed, with the same faint overprint on the T's and slight misalignment on the right margin. details Wolfe would devour like hors d'oeuvres. It read, "Withdraw from the breeding competition or watch your kennel burn." Charming. Subtle. The kind of note you'd expect from a serial arsonist or a very enthusiastic dog show competitor. "You didn't think to report this?" I asked. "And tell the police I'm being threatened by a jealous widow? Hardly." "Miss Corbel," I said, "somebody poisoned a dog this week. This isn't rivalry. This is attempted murder, of the four-legged variety." Her expression didn't change. "Do your job, Mr. Goodwin. I have nothing to hide." A statement that always means, I have something to hide. Before leaving, I asked to see her Dobermanns. They were immaculate, poised, and disciplined in a way that suggested they'd submit their tax returns on time without being asked. I made a wisecrack about their obedience being on par with their owner's decorating style. She didn't laugh. I didn't expect her to. When I returned to the brownstone late that afternoon, Wolfe was behind his desk with a scowl carved into his features. He didn't look up when I entered. "Report, Archie." I handed him the threat letter from Lydia, carefully, without smudging a thing, and gave him a full summary of the interview, though I omitted the part where she considered stabbing me with her eyes. Wolfe examined the letter, pausing at the misaligned spacing. "The same typist," he murmured. "Not a mimic. Identical habits." I popped the tab on a ginger ale. 2 rivals getting the same threat. Someone's stirring the dog bowls. "Yes," Wolfe said, "a puppeteer, pulling strings across multiple kennels. The question is why?" He leaned back, eyes slitting. "Tell me again how Miss Corbel reacted." "With the warmth of a snowstorm." He grunted approval. "Good. Your impressions are useful, even when laced with flippancy." "High praise," I said. "I'll embroider it on a pillow." The phone rang. I picked up. "Nero Wolfe's residence." Verena's voice spilled out, brittle and sharp. "Is Mr. Wolfe available? I demand an update. Lydia is lying. I know she is. She always—" "Madam," Wolfe boomed from behind me, "I do not tolerate demands." He extended a hand. I passed him the phone. "You engage me for discretion," he said evenly. "If you desire hysteria, you may find it elsewhere." He listened to her for several seconds, expression flattening to marble. Then he interrupted. "You will compose yourself. Mr. Goodwin will continue his inquiries. Good day." He hung up, not waiting for permission. "That'll earn you a Christmas card," I said. "Phooey, the woman mistakes volume for influence." He reached for his beer, post-noon, chilled glass, Fritz approved, and took a deliberate sip. "Archie, we are missing a crucial factor. These letters, these threats, their pattern suggests someone who anticipates our movements, someone who benefits from destabilizing both Verena and Lydia." "Someone inside the club?" I asked. "Possibly." Wolfe closed his eyes briefly, thinking. "But more likely, someone who understands pedigrees intimately." "Which narrows it down to half of Manhattan," I said. He ignored the jab. "Tomorrow morning you will revisit Dr. Worth, press her, but carefully, and get Saul's report on Miss Montague's movements." "Got it." Wolfe pulled the bell cord. Fritz appeared in seconds. "Dinner at 8, Wolfe said. "And a note. Please ensure the venison is properly rested." "Yes, sir," Fritz said. Wolfe turned back to me. "Archie." "Yeah?" "You will sleep early. Tomorrow will be taxing." "You always know how to romance a man." He snorted. "Go file your notes." I headed to my desk, the ginger ale fizzing in my hand. As I typed out the day's report, the details lined up like obedient Dobermanns. Threats, forged bloodlines, rivals, secrets. But somewhere, hidden between them, one fact was wagging its tail too loudly. Someone wanted a war in the kennels, and we'd just been handed the leash. I was halfway through typing up notes, Wolfe's preferred form of penance for my sins, when the phone rang with the urgency of someone trying to stop a building from collapsing. At 2:17 p.m., I picked up and said, "Goodwin," because there are worse things to be called. Saul Pantzer's voice eased through the receiver, low and precise, like a man reporting the weather along with the apocalypse. "Archie," he said, "Clyde Reams is dead." My hand froze over the keys. "Say that again." "Behind the Kennel Club, alleyway. Looks like someone made it ugly. You'll want to get down here before the cops finish poking around." Saul never dramatizes. When he says ugly, it means don't wear new shoes. "I'm on my way," I said, hung up and grabbed my coat. The The taxi ride to Midtown felt shorter than ever, a side effect of knowing you're heading toward a corpse. The afternoon sun was bright, but the alley behind the club seemed carved out of perpetual dusk. Shadows clung to brick walls like the city was trying to keep a secret. The smell hit me first: wet trash, dog feed, and the metallic tang of something that shouldn't have been there. Clyde Reams lay on the ground with his limbs arranged as if he'd fallen cleanly. Too cleanly. Anyone who's ever seen a real fall knows bodies don't land politely. The back of his head showed trauma, a blow delivered by someone who understood timing and force. Stebbins stood nearby, arms crossed, cigarette dangling from the corner of his mouth. He gave me a look that said he was neither happy nor surprised to see me. Goodwin. Stebbins, I replied. When they hand out glamorous assignments, they never pick me. He grunted. Keep your hands in your pockets unless I tell you otherwise. That's my usual policy, I said, stepping carefully around a puddle that looked like it had ambitions beyond being water. What do we know? Dead about an hour, Stebbins said. Blunt force trauma, likely from behind. Body was moved. He pointed with his cigarette at faint drag marks under a pile of damp cardboard. Someone wanted it to look like he slipped. Someone sloppy, I noted, or someone in a hurry. Saul appeared at my elbow like an understudy of smoke. I didn't touch anything, he said. But there. He pointed to Clyde's right hand. Clutched between two stiff fingers was a torn scrap of paper. I leaned in. The edges were singed as if heat had licked them. The remaining text listed a dog name I recognized from Lydia Corbell's kennel. Interesting. The paper wasn't evidence, so I memorized the details: color, typeface, tear angle, burning it into mental storage. What was Clyde doing with pedigree papers from Corbell's dogs? I asked Saul quietly. Depends, he said. Maybe blackmail. Maybe leverage. Maybe he knew something he shouldn't. Stebbins shot us a look. If you two are done whispering, stand back. The ME's coming. I stepped behind the police tape, letting the sounds of the alley sink in. The hum of traffic, the faint barking from the kennel building, the murmur of frightened staff watching from the doorway. Fear ran through them like static. Dog handlers, groomers, trainers, they all lived on structure, routine. A murder shredded the rules. Pauline Derringer appeared, pale and tight-lipped. Her eyes darted to Clyde's body, then away. "Dear God," she whispered. "He was just here this morning." "Did he seem different?" I asked. She nodded, gripping her elbows. Distracted, jumpy. I assumed it was nerves over the competition. "Or something heavier," Rufus Gale muttered behind her. The ex-GI looked like he had enough suspicion in him to fuel a small coup. He'd been holding something back. Pauline shot him a glare. "You don't know that." "I know fear when I see it," he said. "A little employee tension, useful but unreliable. Kennel politics made department store rivalries look like tea parties." The ME arrived, examined Clyde briskly, and gave Stebbins a rundown too quiet for me to overhear. I didn't push. The cops were doing their job, and for once no one was threatening to throw me out. "Goodwin," Stebbins said, stepping toward me. "Pass a message to Wolfe. Tell him to stay out of this." "I'll deliver it," I said, "but I won't promise he'll frame it and hang it on the wall." He snorted once, a Stebbins laugh, barely audible. "Just tell him." After another look at the alley, I left. The case had taken its first human victim, and that meant Wolfe's blood pressure was about to rise to the volcanic levels. When I arrived at the brownstone, Wolfe was in the office, glaring at a stack of correspondence as if it had personally offended him. He didn't look up when I entered. "I assume that expression means something died," he said. "More than one something," I said. "Clyde Reams, found in the alley. Blunt force trauma. Body moved." Wolfe's head snapped up, his eyes sharpened. "A man? Killed?" "That's the definition of blunt force trauma," I said. "The police are handling it. Stebbins says hi." Wolfe's nostrils flared with restrained fury. "This alters the matter considerably." He drummed his fingers once. "Detail everything." I did. The alley, the drag marks, the workers' reactions, the singed pedigree scrap linked to Lydia Corbell. Wolfe absorbed it all with increasing displeasure. "This is intolerable," he said at last. "I will not continue representing Miss Montague unless she discloses everything immediately." "You want me to call her?" I asked. "No," he snapped. "I shall." He reached for the phone like a judge reaching for a gavel. His voice, when she answered, was an orchestra of cold fury. "Miss Montague," he said, "your handler has been murdered. Murdered, madam. If you persist in withholding information, I will withdraw forthwith and inform Inspector Kramer that you impeded the investigation." I heard her frantic voice through the receiver, high and sharp as a whistle. Wolfe interrupted ruthlessly. "No, you will come here at 7. Until then, you will speak to no one but Mr. Goodwin." He hung up with the finality of a man executing a chess checkmate. I leaned back. "You know," I said, "for someone who avoids the world, you have a real knack for shaking it." "Phooey," Wolfe glowered. "Archie, this is now an affair involving homicide. My tolerance for deception is non-existent." "You care more about dead dogs or dead humans," I teased. He shot me a glare that contained a flicker of protectiveness. "Do not provoke me. Your levity is acceptable only when it aids analysis." "That's my levity's main job," I said. Wolfe huffed, then reached for the phone again. "Get me Inspector Kramer." That surprised me. Wolfe voluntarily calling Kramer happens about as often as Fritz oversalts the soup. Kramer came on, voice gravelly. "Wolfe?" "Inspector, I have information relevant to your homicide." I watched Wolfe outline the pedigree forgery angle with crisp precision. Kramer listened with his brand of irritated patience, occasionally grunting. At one point he said, "All right, Wolfe, I'll verify it." That, in Kramer speak, is practically a blessing from the Pope. When Wolfe hung up, he exhaled heavily. "We have a murderer who understands dogs, pedigrees, and opportunity," he said. "And now, someone brazen enough to invade my affairs." That choice of words prickled my curiosity. Invade your affairs? As if summoned, the bell rang at 4:03 p.m., orchid hour. Theodore Horstman burst into the office, pale as a ghost wearing a lab coat. "Mr. Wolfe," he gasped, "someone broke into the plant rooms." Wolfe actually rose from his chair. That alone could have sent Kramer running for backup. "Archie," he said in a tone that curled around my name like a command. "Yeah?" "We go. Now." Which is exactly how you end a scene, standing on the threshold of Wolfe in motion. I've seen Wolfe angry more than once, but there's a particular shade of fury he reaches only when someone tampers with his orchids. It isn't loud, it isn't dramatic. It's quiet. Quiet in the way a building is quiet before it collapses on you. When Theodore led us out of the office, he was pale as curdled milk and trembling, hands knotted together like he was afraid they'd shake loose. "Mr. Wolfe, they left something," he managed. We followed him through the hall to the elevator, the one Wolfe used for both his bulk and his pride, and rode up to the rooftop plant rooms. As soon as the doors opened, I could feel Wolfe absorb the air like he was smelling for violators. The familiar scent of damp soil and humidity clung to the rafters, but beneath it, barely noticeable, was the faint foreign trace of leather. Theodore pointed with a shaking hand toward the west potting shelf. There, Wolfe approached with the solemnity of a priest approaching an altar. There, nestled between two pots of delicate Miltonia orchids, lay a single dog collar tag. The metal gleamed under the roof lamps, brass polished with a championship engraving. Baron Krieg, Korbeschloss Kennel. The name hit like an ice cube down the spine. Lydia Corbell's star Doberman, her pride and joy, her walking resume. Wolfe did not touch it. He stared at it, his face tightening like an overwound clock. "Archie," he said quietly, "describe." I leaned in. Standard brass tag, championship etching, tiny engraving flaw near the G, looks like the tool slipped. Wolfe muttered, "Deliberate." "So whoever came in here wanted us to know they had this," I said, "or wanted us to think Lydia's involved." "Phooey," Wolfe snapped. "Miss Corbell is many things, but she does not trespass into my plant rooms. This is misdirection, or mockery." I looked around. "Any signs of forced entry?" Theodore pointed to the western ventilation hatch. "There, dislodged, only for a moment." I climbed the stepladder and examined it. The hinge screws had been tampered with, loosened just enough to lift the panel, not enough to break it. On the sill below, barely visible unless you knew what to look for, were scattered crumbs, tiny beige pellets with a slick coating. "Kibble," I said. "Specialty stuff." Wolfe's nostrils flared. "Explain." This brand is a high-protein competition formula, expensive, used by breeders who think their dogs should eat better than people. So, Wolfe said, someone wishes to associate this intrusion with the dog world. Either that, I said, or someone dropped their snack. That is a red herring, Wolfe declared. Or worse, mockery. The killer flaunts knowledge of our case. I pocketed a mental note of every detail. Nothing gets physically removed from the plant rooms unless Wolfe permits it, and on that day, nothing would be moving except us. Archie, Wolfe said, tone sharpening, you will go to Dr. Worth, now. When you say go, I said, I assume you don't mean run. Do not test my temper. Given the circumstances, I didn't. Dr. Elsie Worth opened her clinic door with the grumpy resignation of someone expecting unwelcome company and being proven right. Mr. Goodwin, she said without enthusiasm, if you're here to tell me another dog has died, take a number. I stepped inside. The clinic was quiet. No clients, no assistants, just a faint antiseptic hum. No dead dogs today, I said. But I'm here about Clyde. Her jaw tightened. I heard, tragic. Tragic usually implies you liked the guy. She crossed her arms. I respected him. That's more than most people get. I leaned on her desk. He ever come to you with complaints, concerns, secrets? Her eyes flicked away. No. Dr. Worth, I said, you're too smart to lie badly. Try again. Silence stretched. She looked at the exam table, not at me. Finally, she exhaled. He came to me 2 months ago, said he was worried about ethical issues in the kennel club. He asked me to verify certain records. I dismissed him. I thought he was being dramatic. What kind of records? She hesitated. Then, lineage records. He believed someone was swapping dogs before competitions, younger dogs presented under older champions' identities. I whistled. That goes beyond fraud. That's sabotage with a bow on top. She winced. I know. I should have taken him seriously. Why didn't you? She rubbed her neck. Because Clyde had ambitions. He wanted leverage. I wasn't sure he wasn't creating drama for personal gain. Red Herring noted. Do you think he shared that idea with anyone else? I asked. Yes, she said quietly. I think he confronted someone, and I think that's why he's dead. Who? I don't know. She looked shaken enough to pass a polygraph. But you do understand the implications, don't you? If someone swapped dogs, it undermines half the championship circuit. I understand, I said, and Wolfe will too. When I returned to the brownstone, the place felt heavier, like a room holding its breath. Wolfe was back in his chair, the dog tag now resting on a piece of white linen before him, like a contaminated artifact. Report, he ordered. I relayed Dr. Worth's confession, the dog-swapping theory, Clyde's suspicions, her regret, and the possible motive swirling like a dog bowl after a temper tantrum. Wolfe listened with slow, simmering disdain for human folly. This is worse than I feared, he said. We contend not merely with malice, but with fraud of systemic scope. And with someone who treats our house like Grand Central, I added. They left kibble on the sill. Wolfe's brow creased. Kibble crumbs do not prove involvement. They prove arrogance. Arrogance plus access, I said. Someone who knows dogs and knows us. Which narrows the field dangerously. A knock sounded at the door. Fritz appeared at the threshold. Mr. Wolfe, Inspector Kramer on the telephone. Wolfe grumbled. Archie, answer. I refuse to indulge interruptions during analysis. I picked up. Goodwin. Kramer's voice growled through the line. We've got Rufus Gale in custody, found him with an unregistered firearm and acting twitchy. Claims he's being framed. Which probably means he is, I said. Maybe, Kramer conceded. But procedure is procedure. We've got to hold him. What about motive? Plenty, Kramer said. He resented Clyde, jealousies. Classic stuff. That's the kind of classic that sells used cars, I said. Not murders. Kramer sighed. Look, I'm not convinced either, but the DA won't ignore it. Tell Wolfe we're holding Gale until further notice. I relayed the update. Wolfe gave a dismissive snort. A false lead. Gale possesses resentment but not initiative. So what's next, I asked. Wolfe lifted the collar tag between 2 fingers. This engraving flaw. It is distinctive. Bring me Baron Krieg. I blinked. You want me to steal a Doberman? Bring the owner, you confounding imbecile." "Ah," I said. "Better idea. Less biting." "The dog stays with Miss Corbel. You will bring her here." A beat passed. Wolfe glared. "And do not jest. This is perilous." "Then stop sending me to people whose dogs outweigh me." A grunt. That was his version of affection. I turned toward the hallway. Before I could reach the coat rack, the phone rang again. Sharp. Urgent. I answered. Pauline Derringer's voice quavered on the line. "Mr. Goodwin, you need to tell Mr. Wolfe. Baron Krieg, Lydia's dog, he's gone. Stolen. Sometime this afternoon." I froze. The killer had just escalated, and Wolfe was going to explode. I've never seen Lydia Corbel look anything other than ice sculpture composed, so when she opened her townhouse door that morning, looking like she'd spent the night wrestling demons instead of Dobermanns, I knew something had cracked in the dog show universe. Her usually surgical posture was bent, her lipstick was missing, and her eyes were streaked with fatigue. Even her immaculate hair looked like it had mutinied. "Goodwin," she said, voice brittle. "Come in." That was the least frosty invitation I'd ever gotten from her, which told me this wasn't staged. When your fiercest kennel rival drops the act, you pay attention. Inside, the townhouse was as painfully modern as ever. Sharp lines, cold metals, and colours chosen by someone allergic to warmth. But today, it felt disrupted. Drawers open. A decorative bowl knocked over, a faint jangling echo of panic clinging to the air. "Someone broke into my kennel last night," she said without preamble. "They took him." "Baron Krieg," I said, "your star." Her throat tightened. "My champion, my bloodline, my entire reputation." She thrust a crumpled sheet of paper at me, and this was left on my office desk. I opened it. Another typed note. Same spacing quirks, same aggressive tone. "A bloodline built on lies will collapse." "And you're sure this isn't a prank?" I asked. Her eyes snapped fire. "My dog is gone. This is not a prank." "Fair enough. Even I wouldn't joke about a missing Doberman." "Show me the break-in," I said. She led me through the townhouse into the rear kennel extension. Sleek glass partitions, polished steel feeding units, and high-end grooming stations. Normally the place hummed with disciplined canine energy. Today it felt hollow. A back window was smashed inward. Shards glittered on the floor like icy confetti. "They cut the lock," she said, pointing, "then forced the latch." "Quiet entry," I muttered. "No neighbours heard anything?" "This is Manhattan," she snapped. "People ignore gunshots unless they're scheduled." I crouched beside the broken frame. The marks were clean, someone who knew tools. On the floor lay a single loose stitch of dark leather. I didn't touch it, but I filed the detail. "You have cameras?" I asked. She bristled. "They were disabled." "Convenient. Don't you dare imply—" "I'm not implying anything," I said, just admiring the timing. She inhaled, ragged. Vulnerability didn't suit her. "Goodwin, I swear to you, I didn't stage this. I would never endanger my own dogs." I studied her. The desperation in her voice wasn't performance. "I believe you," I said. "Now let's talk to your staff." Her staff gathered in the grooming hall, a semicircle of worry, guilt, and defensiveness. There was Ruthie Hale, her senior handler, a stern woman with trimmed silver hair and a suspiciously military bearing. Tobin Marsh, a junior trainer whose twitchy hands made me suspect he drank more coffee than was medically advisable. And Jasper Rudd, assistant handler, 20-something, jittery, eyes darting like he owed money to half the city, which, as it turned out, wasn't far from the truth. "Tell me about last night," I said. Ruthie spoke first. "I did final rounds at 10. Baron was in his stall. Everything secure." "And after that?" "Nobody was scheduled," she said sharply. "We run a disciplined kennel." "Disciplined kennels get robbed," Jasper muttered. Ruthie shot him a look that could have stripped varnish. "And undisciplined assistants lose keys." "I didn't lose anything," Jasper snapped. "Someone planted that key ring behind the alley drain." Interesting. That felt like truth mixed with a red herring. Tobin Marsh swallowed hard. I left early last night. Migraine." Ruthie scoffed. "You left because you can't handle late-night shifts." "Enough," Lydia said sharply, looking like she'd aged 10 years. "Goodwin, what do you need?" I turned to Jasper. "You a gambling man, Mr. Rudd?" His eyes widened. What? No, Ruthie snorted. Yes, he owes money. Jasper flushed. It's not... Look, I didn't take the dog. I swear on anything. Baron was worth more alive than whatever I could get to pay off debts. And Clyde? I asked casually. Jasper flinched. Bingo. What about him? He muttered. You argued with him, I said. 3 days ago, loudly. Lydia's head whipped toward him. Is that true? Jasper tugged at his collar, sweating. It wasn't. He came to me with some garbage about pedigree documents, said he had certificates that could bury us both. I told him he was crazy. And was he? I asked. He went pale. I don't know. Maybe. Clyde was scared of something. Fear again. Fear is a better lead than a map. Who else knew he had those papers? I pressed. I don't know. He didn't trust anyone. A lie, or half of one. Before I could dig further, my phone buzzed. I stepped aside. Goodwin, I answered. Kramer's voice came through steady, low, and, for him, almost civil. We're releasing Gale. That was fast, I said. His gun hasn't been fired in months, Kramer said. Ballistics confirmed it, and his alibi checked out. He's a hothead, but he didn't kill Clyde. Well, don't sound too disappointed. Kramer exhaled. Wolfe's forgery theory. It's holding more water than I'd like. Keep him updated. A rare moment of respect. I logged it mentally along with the key details. Will do, I said, and hung up. I returned to Lydia. Okay, listen carefully. Someone wants to destroy you and Verena at the same time. Clyde had proof of dog swapping. Jasper overheard something dangerous. Baron's been taken. This is coordinated. Lydia sank into a chair. Why? Why target me? Because you matter, I said simply. And in this cutthroat kennel world, reputations aren't just assets. They're explosives. She closed her eyes. The woman who usually commanded rooms with military precision looked like she might collapse. Anything else you're hiding? I asked. No, she whispered. I believed her. That scared me more. Back at the brownstone, Wolfe was barricaded behind his desk, fingers steepled, eyes fixed on the collar tag, as if he could wrestle answers from it by willpower alone. Fritz had just left after placing a tray of sliced pears and Stilton, Wolfe's thinking food. It was 3:42 p.m., safely between orchid sessions. The air was thick with unsaid calculations. Report, Wolfe said. I did. Lydia's panic. Jasper's confession light, the break-in, the window, the note, the tension, the messy staff dynamics. Kramer's update, Gale's release. Wolfe listened without blinking, which is his version of pacing the room. When I finished, he held up the collar tag. With Baron Krieg missing, he murmured, this becomes suggestive. You think this tag came from him? I asked. Not think, Wolfe corrected. Infer. Observe the engraving floor here, near the G, he pointed. This floor is consistent, unique. It suggests a batch of tags manufactured for that kennel. If Baron Krieg was taken and this tag was planted here, then the intruder had access to the dog before the theft was discovered. You solved that from a scratched piece of brass, I said. Meanwhile, I interrogated a whole kennel and got a headache. You are not ornamental, Archie, Wolfe said, matter-of-fact. Your inquiries produce context. That, in Wolfe speak, was a sonnet. Before I could savour it, the phone rang. I picked up. Goodwin, Saul Panzer's voice slid through smoothly. Archie, I tailed someone. My spine straightened. Who? A woman. Medium height. Dark coat. Delivering envelopes to Pauline Derringer. The kennel manager? Yes. The envelopes matched the dimensions of the threat letters. I pressed the receiver tighter. Did you follow her? Not yet, Saul said. Wanted instructions. Hold, I said, and handed Wolfe the phone. Wolfe listened, grunted once, then said, Continue following her, Mr. Panzer, but do not engage, and maintain distance. He hung up and fixed his gaze on me. A courier, anonymous, connected to the kennel, delivering threats. The puzzle refines itself. And gets uglier by the hour, I said. Wolfe tugged the bell cord. Fritz appeared, immaculate as always. Beer, Wolfe said, for thought. Fritz nodded and vanished. Before Wolfe could say another word, the phone rang again, its tone sharp, urgent. I answered. Saul this time was not calm. Archie, you need to get down here. What happened? I demanded. He took a beat. They found Baron Krieg. I felt a chill slide down my back. Alive? No, Saul said quietly. Dead, in an abandoned warehouse on East 49th. I closed my eyes. The killer had drawn blood again, and the game had just hit its midpoint. I've never been fond of warehouses, especially the kind that look like they'd collapse if you sneeze too hard. But when Kramer calls and says, "Get down here," you go, mostly because if you don't, he'll show up at the brownstone and ruin Wolfe's digestion. So, at 9:06 a.m., I stood outside an abandoned brick cube on East 49th, staring at a broken loading door while the wind whipped garbage around like it owed someone money. Kramer stepped out from behind a police wagon, coat flapping, cigar clenched with the tension of a man who'd rather be anywhere else. "Goodwin," he said. Not friendly, not hostile, just resigned. "Inspector," I said. "If you're auditioning new real estate, I'd pass on this one." He snorted. "Inside." The interior smelled like rust, dust, and sorrow. The floor creaked underfoot, beams groaned, and every shadow looked like it had a knife. But the worst part sat near the center. Baron Krieg, stretched out on a slab of cold concrete, looking too still for a dog who'd once been the gold standard of Dobermanns in Manhattan. "Cause?" I asked quietly. "Sedation," Kramer said. "Vet grade. No visible trauma. They wanted him quiet, not messy." I winced. "Well, that's one advantage over human corpses. They don't come with teeth." Kramer gave half a snort. "You're a riot, Goodwin." Professional respect, Manhattan's rarest currency. I knelt beside the dog. The fur was clean, groomed, no signs of struggle. Whoever did this handled him with precision. That didn't match an impulsive killer. This was methodical. "What do we know?" I asked. Kramer gestured at the far corner. "Found something over there." A tech handed me a small evidence bag. Inside lay a thin metal tool, 4 inches long, shaped like a narrow chisel with a pointed tip. "What's this?" I asked. "Micro-engraving tool," the tech said. "Used for fine etching on small metal surfaces, like jewelry or dog collar tags." My stomach tightened. "Let me guess. This could make the same flaw we saw on the tag left in Wolfe's orchid rooms." Kramer glared. "I didn't say that." "You didn't need to." I handed it back. "Someone's playing artisan to our nightmare." Kramer rubbed his forehead. "We also found this." He nodded at a metal barrel pushed against the wall. A tech reached inside with gloves and pulled out handfuls of shredded paper. "Documents," I muttered. "Burn pile." "Almost," Kramer said. "Some of the stuff didn't catch." I sifted the shreds, without touching them naturally. Phrases jumped out. Roster, eligible, substitution. Certificate revision. Handler compliance. Championship authentication. I let out a low whistle. Someone was running a whole fraudulent dog identity factory. Kramer grunted. "That's your theory." "Come on, Inspector. This isn't just a couple forged certificates. This is a network. Multiple substitutions. Dogs standing in for other dogs. Championship eligibility engineered by paperwork." Kramer didn't disagree. He just muttered, "Hell." "And look at the timing," I said. "Clyde threatened to expose something. He ends up dead. Baron Krieg is stolen. His tag shows up in Wolfe's private sanctum. Then Baron ends up here, sedated and dumped." "Message?" Kramer asked. "Loud and clear," I said. "Someone wants to control the pedigree ladder and scare every breeder who might challenge them." Before Kramer could reply, Saul Panzer materialized beside us like a shadow with manners. "Inspector, Archie," he said with a nod. "What have you got?" I asked. "Identification," Saul said. "The woman delivering envelopes." Kramer tensed. "You found her?" "Yes," Saul said calmly. "Dr. Elsie Worth." I blinked. "The vet?" Saul nodded. "I followed her last night. She delivered another envelope to Pauline Derringer outside a subway entrance." "Matches the threat letters?" I asked. "Same envelope stock, same dimensions." Kramer swore under his breath. "Worth? I thought she was clean." "Her coat pockets were bulging," Saul added, "likely with documents." That was enough for me. "We're taking her to Wolfe," Kramer grunted. "If you get something usable, you call me, immediately." "As always," I said, because antagonizing Kramer only pays off when you're bored. Back at the brownstone, Wolfe was at his desk, consuming a plate of Fritz's veal sweetbreads with the air of a man fortifying himself for battle. He looked at us as the elevator doors slid open. "Well?" Wolfe asked. Saul repeated the essentials with his usual elegant brevity. When he finished, Wolfe leaned back, his face darkening. "Archie," Wolfe said, "bring Dr. Worth at once, but," he raised a finger, "do not antagonize her unnecessarily. That woman deals in toxins." "I'll keep my distance," I said. "I like my organs functional." Wolfe gave a curt nod. "Good." I left immediately. Dr. Elsie Worth opened her clinic door looking more weary than hostile. "Mr. Goodwin?" she said, hair mussed, eyes rimmed red. "What now?" "We need to talk," I said. "Wolfe wants you." "That man always wants something," she muttered. "True," I said, "but this time what he wants is answers. You can give them voluntarily or after Kramer asks unpleasant follow-ups." She stiffened. "Fine. Let me grab my coat." Her compliance was surprising. Guilt and exhaustion often look similar up close. 15 minutes later, we were in the office. Wolfe waited behind his desk, a portrait of ominous calm. "Dr. Worth," Wolfe said, "you have involved yourself in matters far beyond veterinary medicine." She flinched. "I didn't kill anyone." "That remains to be established," Wolfe said. "But you have delivered envelopes tied to threatening messages. You attempted to retrieve documents. You entered restricted areas." Her shoulders sagged. "I wasn't trying to hurt anyone." "Explain," Wolfe commanded. She inhaled sharply. "Years ago, Verina's husband paid me to alter lineage tests. Just a few, enough to elevate a flawed bloodline into eligibility. He said he'd lose everything if I didn't cooperate." "And you complied," Wolfe said. "I did," she whispered. "And I regretted it every day since. But the documents, proof of what I did, ended up in Clyde's hands somehow. I didn't know how much he knew. I panicked." "So you delivered threats?" Wolfe asked. "No," she snapped. "I delivered letters Verena sent to her staff. Reminders, instructions, nothing criminal." "Miss Derringer says otherwise," I lied mildly, earning Wolfe's hidden approval. Elsie's eyes widened. She misinterpreted. I was trying to help her keep the kennel compliant. I thought if certain records disappeared, no one would be blamed." "And the collar tag you left in my orchid rooms?" Wolfe asked coldly. She swallowed. That was an accident. It must have fallen from my pocket while I was searching for documents Verena begged me to hide." "A tidy confession," Wolfe murmured, "but incomplete." "I swear I didn't kill Clyde," she pleaded, "or Baron. I would never harm an animal." Her voice cracked. She wasn't lying, not about that. I looked at Wolfe. "False lead number 2? "Indeed," Wolfe said, face unreadable. "She falsified records. She concealed evidence, but she is not our murderer." Elsie trembled. "Then who is?" Wolfe didn't answer, because the warehouse, the tools, the stolen dog, the forged papers, all pointed to someone else pulling the strings, and we were running out of suspects. It's not every day I see Wolfe treating the office like a command center, but when he does, it has the same energy as a battleship captain preparing for naval action. At 10:03 a.m., he was at his desk, leaning slightly forward, his version of sprinting, and issuing orders with the crisp dignity of a man who could run a small country if he felt inclined. Saul Pantzer stood near the red chair, hands in pockets, giving off quiet competence. Ori Cather had his usual eager beaver shine, like he was ready to crack the case and claim credit before finishing breakfast. "Gentlemen," Wolfe said, "we require the late Mr. Montague's original ledger. Without it, conjecture reigns. Find it." Saul nodded once. "Where do we start?" "Clyde Reams," Wolfe said. "He stole documents from everyone else. He may have stored copies." I perked up. "Storage lockers? Safety deposit boxes?" Clyde wasn't the type for a diary, unless it listed brands of dog shampoo he hated. Wolfe grunted. "Mr. Panzer will identify where he kept things he did not wish his employer to know." Saul took that as the world's politest dismissal and left. Ori followed a moment later, practically trotting out the door. Wolfe turned to me. "Archie, sit." "I'm already sitting." "Then listen. That's Wolfe for you. Always specific but never redundant. This ledger contains evidence of systemic corruption, payments, transactions, names. It will point not only to fraud, but to motive." And maybe a killer, I said. Wolfe gave me a look that suggested stating the obvious was only acceptable when he did it. Precisely. The phone rang at 10:21, I answered. Saul's voice came through with the calm triumph of a man who finds needles in haystacks because he knows which haystacks lie. Archie, jackpot. Lay it on me. Clyde rented a storage locker under the name Peter Doyle. Nothing in his financial records. He paid in cash. Where? Riverside Storage, West 96th. On my way. Wolfe heard that and waved a hand. Go. Return immediately when you have it. I tossed him a salute. Yes, sir, Admiral Wolfe. He didn't dignify that with a comment. Riverside Storage was the kind of place that smelled like dust, mildew, and regrets. Saul was already there, leaning against a locker door with a tiny smile that said he'd done the hard part. Number 214, he said. Ori stood nearby, having inserted himself into the operation like static electricity. I had them check the sign-in logs, Ori said. Clyde accessed this unit twice in the last month. Saul popped the padlock cleanly. Inside were stacks of cardboard boxes, a small suitcase, and a few rolled photo prints. Nothing fancy, but Clyde never struck me as a scrapbooking type. We dug through the boxes. Most contained dog show photographs, close-ups of Dobermanns in aggressive poses, judges holding ribbons, handlers smiling like used car salesmen. Another box held pedigree certificates, some clean, some with handwritten corrections, and some altered. Saul opened the suitcase. This one. Inside lay a book, leather-bound, worn at the corners, about the size of a hotel Bible but infinitely more sinful. A small brass lock held it closed. Saul used a slender tool, picked it in 2 seconds and opened it flat. A coded ledger. Columns of dates, payment amounts, names, initials, shorthand, identifiers, dog IDs, handler fees, substitution notes, the language of organized fraud. But one name appeared repeatedly. PD. Pauline Derringer, I said. Saul nodded. Paid off for swaps. At least a dozen entries. And here, Ori added, pointing, JR. Jasper Rudd, I said. Perfect. Gambling debts and payoff entries. That's motive stew. We photographed everything, no removing originals, locked the ledger back in the suitcase and returned with it. Back at the brownstone, Wolfe had Fritz bring coffee, ginger ale for me, and placed the suitcase on his desk like a holy scripture. Archie, he said, bring Pauline. I sighed. She isn't going to appreciate the invitation. Wolfe's voice iced. Archie. Got it. No cookies and tea. Pauline Derringer arrived at 12:14 p.m., tight-lipped and trembling just enough to suggest conscience or terror. I escorted her in. Wolfe gestured toward the red chair. Sit. She sat. He opened the suitcase and displayed the ledger like a prosecutor unveiling Exhibit A. Miss Derringer, Wolfe said, tone almost gentle, which was usually a bad sign. You have accepted payments for improper substitutions. Yes or no? She shut her eyes. Yes. Explain. My salary is a joke, she said bitterly. Verena expects perfection for pennies. Lydia offers prestige but no security. I handled the dogs. I organized schedules. I saw everything. So, handlers paid me to tweak things. Small things. Define small, Wolfe said. She swallowed. If a champion dog was injured, I arranged a substitute. Always similar enough that no one noticed. And the certificates, Wolfe asked. She flinched. Clyde found out. He blackmailed me. Said he'd tell the board. Said he had proof. And did he? She shook her head. He had copies, not originals. He didn't know where the originals were. You assume, Wolfe said. Not helpful. Look, she pleaded. I never wanted anyone hurt. The money wasn't even that much. Lydia was the one who demanded the swaps. She wanted her kennel spotless. Wolfe cut her off. Miss Corbel did not order these substitutions. Your desperation has made you careless with lies. Pauline gasped. Archie Goodwin 1, Pauline 0. Wolfe's voice sharpened. You accepted bribes. You participated in falsification. But murder? You lack both temperament and skill. Tears spilled. She wasn't faking. I didn't kill Clyde. He scared me, but I didn't kill him. I felt a flicker of sympathy. Pauline was crooked, sure, but Crooked wasn't the same as homicidal. Wolfe closed the ledger. You will remain available. Go home. Speak to no one. I escorted her out. She staggered into the hallway like the truth had weight. When I returned, Wolfe was rereading the ledger. Notice, he said, pointing to a recent entry. 500. J.R. Week of competition. Special risk. That's Jasper, I said. Paid the week the first poisoning started. A correlation, Wolfe said, but not proof. The phone rang. Fritz, as always, appeared in the doorway, never calling from the kitchen, and announced, Inspector Kramer. Wolfe grunted. Give it here. Kramer's voice filled the room. Wolfe, new letters just hit the Kennel Club board. They implicate Verena, Lydia, handlers, vets, everyone. The killer wants chaos. Of course, Wolfe said. Confusion is a screen. Anything you want to share? Kramer pressed. Soon, Wolfe said curtly. Very soon. He hung up with a click that suggested he pitied the receiver. Then Wolfe sighed, soft but real. Archie, he said, take care tonight. I blinked. Wolfe giving unsolicited concern was rarer than a polite taxi driver. Trouble is moving quickly, he continued. A cornered animal, even a human, will bite. I put on a grin. I'll try not to get rabies. Wolfe grimaced. Confound you. But there was warmth under the frost. He straightened. We have enough. It is time. For what? Wolfe's eyes gleamed. To summon them all. A chill ran down my spine. The showdown was coming, and Wolfe intended to conduct it like a maestro. If there's one thing Wolfe hates more than deceit, it's having a crowd inside his office after 7 p.m. But on this particular night, he allowed it. Barely. At 7:58 p.m., I was arranging chairs like a bargain bin stagehand, while Wolfe sat behind his desk, radiating enough disapproval to wilt orchids at 40 paces. The office felt tight, packed with perfume, sweat, ego, and guilt in equal measure. And somewhere underneath it all, murder. The doorbell rang at exactly 8 o'clock. Fritz appeared at the office threshold, hands folded, face blank except for a hint of apology. Mr. Wolfe, he said softly, your guests. Send them in, Wolfe intoned, sounding like a judge about to pass sentence on civilization. The parade began. Verena Montague swept in first, wrapped in sable and tension, followed by Lydia Corbel, stiff as a frozen flagpole. Pauline Derringer came next, pale and trembling, then Dr. Elsie Worth with her stoic guilt. Rufus Gale lumbered in at the rear, looking like he'd rather be anywhere else. Jasper Rudd slunk in last, hands twitching, eyes wild. And behind them, solid as granite, came Kramer and Stebbins, the NYPD version of Cain and Abel if both carried cigars. I shut the door behind them and took my post by Wolfe's desk. Wolfe waited until everyone had found a seat, or chosen to stand in Lydia's case because sitting would have implied she was mortal, and then lifted a hand. Ladies and gentlemen, he said, thank you for coming. No one thanked him back. The silence felt fragile enough to crack if someone so much as hiccuped. Wolfe pressed his fingertips together. I will begin with economy. You are all involved in a latticework of fraud, greed, and ambition within the pedigree dog world, an ecosystem as cutthroat as any political caucus or Wall Street firm. He glanced at Verena and Lydia. Your rivalries, your competitions, and your reputations have bred a particularly virulent form of dishonesty. I caught Verena flinching. Lydia stiffened like a porcelain statue discovering it can sweat. Wolfe continued. Years ago, Mr. Montague falsified tests, papers, and records. He enlisted parties within his employ, including Dr. Worth. Elsie lowered her gaze. And Miss Derringer. Pauline covered her face with trembling fingers. He redirected bloodlines, substituted dogs, bribed handlers, all to maintain the illusion of superiority. Here, Wolfe turned slightly in my direction. Archie. I handed him the photostats I'd prepared. He slid them across the desk toward Kramer. Inspector, these are certified copies of the ledger found in Mr. Ream's storage unit. Kramer nodded grimly, flipping through the pages. Stebbins read over his shoulder, jaw tightening. Wolfe resumed. This ledger demonstrates a coordinated scheme, substitutions, payments, and bribes. But it also records something more critical, resentment. Jasper Rudd shifted like someone had lit a match under him. Wolfe's gaze sharpened. Mr. Reams discovered the extent of the corruption. He attempted blackmail. He died as a result. Gasps, murmurs, and one strangled sob from Pauline. Lydia barked, "Are you accusing me?" "No," Wolfe said simply. "You are vain, competitive, and obstinate, Miss Corbel, but not homicidal. Your world depends upon reputation. Murder is too crude a tool for you." Lydia nearly choked. Wolfe continued as though discussing rainfall patterns. "Nor did Miss Montague kill anyone. Her arrogance is formidable, but she lacks the subtlety. Miss Derringer? No, she is corrupt but soft. Mr. Gale. His temper is quick, but his methods are blunt." Rufus Gale exhaled in relief. Verena scowled. Pauline trembled harder. I watched Jasper. His eyes darted like a trapped rodent looking for a weak floorboard. "Let us consider," Wolfe said, "what the murderer required. Access to all kennels, including restricted areas, intimate familiarity with dogs, routines, and ID tags, skill with sedation, knowledge of which handlers were bribed, and a personal motive tied to debt and opportunity." Jasper shot to his feet. "You can't pin this on me." Kramer held out an arm like a human stop sign. "Sit." Jasper didn't. "It wasn't me," Jasper cried, pointing wildly. "It was Pauline. She handled the swaps. She pocketed money. She—" "Mr. Rudd," Wolfe said sharply, "Miss Derringer is guilty of impropriety, not homicide. Moreover, she lacks strength for the blows delivered to Mr. Reams." Jasper swallowed hard. Then it was Elsie. She deals with drugs, sedatives. She had Baron in her clinic." Dr. Worth's voice wavered but held. "I didn't kill anyone, Jasper. You know I didn't." "She's lying," Jasper shouted. "It was Verena. She—" "Mr. Rudd," Wolfe boomed. "Silence." Even I froze. Wolfe's expression went from volcanic to glacial. "Your desperation betrays you. You are the killer." Chaos erupted. Verena gasped. Lydia whispered a curse worthy of sailors. Pauline shrieked. Rufus muttered, "I knew it." Elsie clutched her chest. Jasper stumbled backward, sweat pouring. Kramer didn't move. He just stared at Jasper, cigar between teeth, waiting for Wolfe to finish. Wolfe lifted the engraving tool sealed in its evidence bag. This object was found beside Baron Krieg's body. Its microscopic scratches matched those on the collar tag left in my orchid rooms. He let that sink in. Those scratches match precisely, microscopically, with the grooming kit in Mr. Rudd's possession. Jasper shook his head. No, that's impossible." "It is fact," Wolfe said. "You used your kit to re-engrave tags. Poorly, I might add." A few nervous chuckles escaped before dying under Wolfe's stare. "You sedated Baron Krieg. You removed him quietly. You killed Clyde Reams because he threatened your side business. And you placed the collar tag in my plant rooms to strike at me, to distract the investigation, to insult, and to intimidate." Jasper collapsed into the nearest chair, face ashen. I didn't mean... He wasn't supposed to. Clyde wouldn't back off. He said he'd ruin everything." Wolfe's voice iced. "He meant to reveal truth. You meant to silence him." Jasper's shoulders shook. I needed money. The gambling. The debts. I thought if I controlled the whole bloodline system, if I took over, the handlers would pay me. The breeders would need me." He choked on a sob. I didn't mean for the dog to die. He overdosed, I swear." Kramer lifted a hand. "Stebbins," he said. Pearlie moved forward with methodical certainty, cuffed Jasper with the casual professionalism of a man tying his shoes, and pulled him upright. "You've got the right to remain silent," Stebbins growled, "which is lucky because you're not making sense anyway." Jasper broke, sobbing as they hauled him toward the door. Verena trembled. Lydia sat rigid. Pauline cried softly. Elsie covered her mouth in horror. Rufus stared at the floor. Wolfe exhaled once, controlled, measured, profound. Kramer turned. "Wolfe," he paused, chewing the cigar without biting it. "You saved us weeks." Wolfe inclined his head. "Inspector." It was the Wolfe-Kramer equivalent of hugging. Stebbins escorted Jasper out. Kramer followed, giving me a curt nod that said, "Nice work, Goodwin. Don't get cocky." As the door closed, Verena whispered, "Mr. Wolfe, I don't know how to thank—" "Madam," Wolfe interrupted, "your thanks will be accepted in the form of a prompt payment of my fee." Archie Goodwin, 1. Romance of crime solving, 0. I escorted the shaken guest to the door. The moment it shut, I turned back to Wolfe. "Well," I said, "that was lively. Should I bring Fritz in with a victory parade?" Wolfe groaned. "Archie, beer." Music to my ears. As Fritz appeared, silently, respectfully, with Wolfe's chilled glass and a plate of cheese, the brownstone finally exhaled. Justice was done, order restored, orchids unviolated. And me? I opened the windows to let the night breeze sweep out the stench of lies. The morning after a murderer leaves the brownstone in handcuffs is a peculiar thing. The air feels too clean, the silence too respectful, and Wolfe too satisfied for anyone's safety. It was just shy of 11 when I stepped into the office and found him leaning back in the red leather chair with his eyes half closed, fingertips pressed together in a cathedral of smug serenity. If he'd been purring, I wouldn't have been surprised. Theodore had finished Orchid Hours 3 minutes earlier, and Wolfe always enjoyed the afterglow of superiority that came from not being interrupted while communing with flowers more expensive than most used cars. I was about to ask if he wanted coffee when the doorbell rang. Fritz appeared at the threshold a moment later. "Mr. Wolfe," he announced, "Madame Montague is here." Wolfe's eyelids cracked open like reluctant vault doors. "Send her in." I had about enough time to brace myself before Verena Montague strode in, wearing enough perfume to dissolve the wallpaper. Her sable coat swirled around her like she was entering a courtroom to sue God for libel. She stopped before Wolfe's desk, raised her chin, and said in a tone that implied she was playing benefactress to a struggling charity, "Mr. Wolfe, I have come to settle my fee." Wolfe did not stand, naturally. Rising for clients is a hobby he leaves to me. "Madam," he said, "that is gratifying." She laid an envelope on his desk like it contained the Magna Carta. "I must thank you," she added, turning to include me, "and you as well, Mr. Goodwin. My husband's sins were greater than I knew." "That happens in the best marriages," I said. "Just think of the excitement." Wolfe shot me a look that translated to, "Archie, cease." Verena inhaled sharply. "I am grateful," she continued stiffly, "and though the scandal will be unpleasant, it is preferable to being murdered." "I agree," I said. "Living does have its advantages." Wolfe cleared his throat. "Madam, allow me to be direct. I will never again accept a case involving dogs, Dobermanns least of all." Fritz, standing discreetly at the door, blinked once. If Wolfe had announced he was resigning to join a circus, the effect would have been identical. Verena gave a brittle smile. "I will refrain from recommending you to fellow breeders." "Please do," Wolfe said. She swept out, leaving behind her perfume and a silence heavy enough to upholster furniture. Fritz closed the door behind her. Wolfe tapped the envelope with a finger. "Archie." I stepped forward and plucked it up. "Full amount?" Wolfe grunted. "She has money and guilt, a remunerative combination." Before I could respond, the doorbell chimed again. Fritz reappeared, though this time he looked faintly bemused. "A Miss Corbel wishes a moment." Lydia Corbel was the opposite of Verena in every way. Where Verena entered rooms like a conquering army, Lydia moved like a frost. But today something had melted. She walked in with dignity, not hauteur, and stopped before Wolfe's desk. "I came," she said, "to thank you both." Her voice was flat but genuine. "You treated me fairly. I do not expect that often. If you'd asked me yesterday whether Lydia Corbel was capable of sincerity, I'd have bet against it and pocketed a tidy sum. But there she was." Wolfe inclined his head politely. "Madam," she turned to me, "Mr. Goodwin, you were professional." "That almost sounded like a compliment," I said. "Careful, I might faint." Her lips curved by 3 micrometers, her version of a smile. "Good day, gentlemen." After she left, I said, "If the trend continues, next we'll get Pauline bringing us a casserole." "Archie," Wolfe's tone was a warning, "spare me frivolity." "I'm not sure I can," I told him. "It's congenital." Fritz had scarcely returned to the kitchen when the bell rang for the 3rd time. This time it was not surprising. Kramer does have a talent for showing up just when you think peace might break out. He came in with his cigar already lit, trailing a scent that could have fumigated a barn. "Wolfe," he grunted, collapsing into the red chair without waiting for permission. "Goodwin." "Inspector," Wolfe said with a tone of resigned diplomacy. "I've got final statements," Kramer announced. He fished a folded report from his coat and slapped it onto Wolfe's desk. Jasper Rudd spilled everything. "Everything?" I asked. Kramer nodded. He admitted killing Clyde Reams to get the ledger, admitted poisoning the dogs to stir up scandal, and admitted putting down Baron Krieg to erase evidence from the old swaps. He sucked on his cigar, swears he never meant to kill the animal, but intent doesn't matter much when the dog ends up dead. Wolfe inhaled through his nose, deeply displeased. "A sordid affair." "That's putting it mildly," Kramer muttered. "We're cleaning up the mess. DA's prepping charges." He paused, then added grudgingly, "You did good work. Saved us a hell of a long detour." Wolfe's eyebrows flicked upward. "Thank you, Inspector." I nearly applauded. Compliments from Kramer are rarer than Fritz burning a souffle. Kramer leaned back. "Only thing left is the press. Somebody leaked the collar tag intrusion. Now they're printing stories about your orchid rooms being compromised." Wolfe emitted a sound like a walrus refusing to cooperate. "Confound them." "Relax," Kramer said. "Lon Cohen's running a balanced article in the Gazette tomorrow. Says you cracked the whole thing open." That mollified Wolfe a little. Not much, but enough. Kramer stood. "All right, I'll leave you to your beer." Then, with a dry glance, "And Goodwin, don't get smart." "I only do that when necessary," I said. "Then this city is doomed." He left. Once the door shut, I let Wolfe sit in the aftermath of rare harmony with the NYPD. He rested his hand on the bell cord. "Archie, beer." I fetched him a chilled glass, though it was barely past noon. "A celebratory exemption?" "I require fortification," Wolfe declared. "Exposure to canine melodrama has exhausted me." After a long swallow, he closed his eyes. "Archie." "If you ever contemplate acquiring a Doberman, you will do so from a residence other than this one," I grinned. "You wouldn't accept a little added security, fierce animal guarding the office." "Archie." His lids opened, revealing a stare capable of perforating hardwood. "If you bring a Doberman into this house, I shall relocate to Montenegro." "Montenegro's lovely this time of year," I said. "I'll start researching kennels." "Phooey." The rest of the day slowed into a comforting lull. Fritz prepared roast duck, golden, aromatic, crisp-skinned perfection, and served it precisely at 8. Wolfe savoured it with reverence bordering on worship. I watched him eat, feeling a rare warmth settle inside the brownstone. No sedatives, no murderers, no panicked breeders, no barking Dobermans, no forging maniacs with engraving tools. Just Wolfe, Fritz's cooking, a solved case, and the kind of quiet that made a man grateful for sturdy walls and good company. When dinner ended and Wolfe leaned back with a satisfied sigh, I decided it was time to seal the night. "Well," I said, stacking plates, "no more dogs, no more danger, no more mayhem." Wolfe shut his eyes. "Archie, cease tempting fate." "Who? Me? I wouldn't dream of it." But between you and me, I figured fate was already listening, and probably sharpening its claws, because peace never lasts long in this house. And Wolfe? Well, Wolfe is Wolfe, which means there's always another knock coming. Someday. But not tonight. Tonight, equilibrium was restored. And for a detective in Manhattan, that's as close as you ever get to paradise.